In an attempt to understand the Polish worldview, my colleague and I conducted an ethnographic survey among 10 Poles, 4 women and 6 men, ages 18 through 51. All of the participants in the research are Roman Catholic, although a few would not consider themselves faithful to or in agreement with the Church's teaching. Poland was founded in 966 AD when King Mieszko I was baptized into the Western Latin Rite. This decision meant that Poland remained Roman Catholic when some of its southern and eastern neighbors went with the Eastern or Orthodox Church. Being Roman Catholic also meant a focus toward Rome and the West, rather than toward Constantinople and the East. As a result, religious, cultural, and political ties integrated Poland with its Western neighbors, Austria and the German states, as well as with Lithuania when it also chose Catholicism. The Union of Lublin in 1569 created the Commonwealth of Poland-Lithuania, a nation-state which for nearly 200 years was among Europe's largest countries. Poland considered itself a bulwark against the Baltic pagans, the Orthodox Russians, and later the Muslims from the east and south. The role of King Jan III Sobieski in the Battle of Vienna in 1683 to turn back the Ottomans was crucial to stopping the Muslim advance into Europe. Poland was a relatively tolerant society, with large numbers of Jews, Orthodox, pagans, and even Muslim Tatars holding positions of prominence. The Reformation also saw large numbers of converts to Protestantism, especially Calvinism. However, wars with Protestant Sweden, especially the Deluge, 1655 to 1660, led to a marked change in Polish tolerance, including the banishment of the Arian brothers and the death penalty for conversion from Catholicism. The valiant defense of the monastery of Jasna Góra in Częstochowa during the Swedish Deluge, and the legend surrounding the icon of the Black Madonna housed in the monastery, greatly assisted in the process of counter-reformation in Poland. Still today, most high school students in Poland make a walking pilgrimage to the shrine of the Black Madonna in Częstochowa. Although Poland continued to be relatively tolerant in comparison with most other European countries, the religious beliefs of its citizens were frequently tied to their ethnicity. Russians were Orthodox, Germans Protestant, Jews and also Muslim Tatars, and then Poles were Catholic, with very few exceptions. The divisions of Poland among the great powers of Russia, Prussia, and Austria in the late 1700s, Poland's rebirth in 1918, and then the experiences of World War II led to a Poland that is today much less diverse, both ethnically and religiously. According to the 2021 census, Poland is 99% ethnically Polish. Information regarding religious affiliation was voluntary, but of the 79% who responded, 90% are Roman Catholic, 0.5% are Orthodox, 0.36% are Jehovah's Witness, Lutherans are 0.22%, and evangelicals are about 0.2% of the population. The Lutheran and Orthodox adherents usually have a German or Russian ethnic background, respectively, so the common expression to be Polish is to be Catholic usually still rings true. Family remains very important in Polish society. As we conducted our survey, nearly every respondent mentioned their father, or more often their mother, as an authority figure. Those who had lost a parent believed that their dead parent still took interest in their lives, and in a couple of cases, believed that the dead loved one had intervened to rescue them from some calamity. Every year, the holiday that sees the most travel is not Christmas or Easter, but rather All Saints' Day, when families return to their home areas and visit the graves of their loved ones. As one person described it, in this way, we can include our whole family, alive and dead, in All Saints' Day. The Cultural Diagnosis Report of 2015 states that respondents listed successful marriage as the top condition for happiness. This also indicates the high value that Poles place on family. One interesting trend, however, is that friends has doubled in importance for happiness since 1992. This helps explain why one of my interviewees, when asked about ancestors influencing us, said that other loved ones who have died, not just those related to him, still influence his life today, and that he asks them for advice. Family is very important, but there is a trend toward looking for important relationships outside of family. The 2019 Eurobarometer survey indicates that only 9% of Poles would call themselves atheist, agnostic, or non-believers. Of the 10 people who responded to our question about God, 1 didn't believe in God, and 2 weren't sure if he existed. 1 of the 7 who believed in God had nothing to say about his perception of God. However, 7 people, including one of the ones who wasn't sure he existed, had a description of God. Of those 7, 3 thought of him as a person, including one of our aforementioned agnostics. The other 4 thought of God as a force or energy. The personal terms included almighty, merciful, and forgiving. One young man sheepishly referred to God as a kind old grandpa. The ones who specifically described God as a force said that he is a powerful, positive energy for good. These respondents indicated that God works in people's lives, that he gave a feeling of security, that he was the quintessence of knowledge, but yet they did not see him as a person. As an aside, the fact that in English I'm using a male personal pronoun for God has no connection with how our respondents referred to God. In Polish, the word God is male and personal, but it's a function of grammar that then requires the pronoun to also be male and personal. In the same way that in Polish, car is male and requires a male pronoun, and truck is female and requires a female pronoun. When we talked about death, for many of our respondents, the issue of death seemed to be the one that most engaged in emotional response and even influenced the rest of the conversation. One person said that death was purely biological and the person ceased to exist. 10 of the respondents were not sure, calling death a big question mark, although they had a few ideas. 2 young men said that they tried to never think about death. One young man said that the Muslim idea of death was better, going to heaven and having 40 virgins. Only one person stated what I would consider a Catholic view of death, that when we die, we go to purgatory and then on to either heaven or hell. According to him, even an atheist would have a chance in purgatory. The most common idea was that after death we live on, not as a soul, but as a force or a ghost in a different dimension. We remain able to see what happens here and sometimes to influence it. No one thought of life after death as a corporeal existence. The view of death is intertwined with the view of the spirit world. 3 of the male respondents do not believe in ghosts or in any kind of spirit. They also didn't see their ancestors as having any influence over them, other than genetic, or perhaps as an example to follow. All of the female respondents and 2 of the men, however, do believe in spirits. One person, our faithful Catholic from before, specifically mentioned the Holy Spirit, and several believed in good and evil spirits that can possess a person. I was surprised at the stories that the questions about spirits and our ancestors prompted, however. Several respondents began to share how their dead mother or father had talked to them, intervened in their life, or rescued them from danger. Even one lady who said she didn't believe in ghosts went on to share 2 stories of how her mother, after death, had rescued her. 3 people used the idea of guardian angel and dead parent interchangeably. With the importance of All Saints' Day in the Polish calendar and the important Catholic practices of prayers and masses for the dead, it is easy to see how significant this issue is for Poles. When asked about the church was reviled, criticized, and kicked to the curb by most respondents. And I emphasize, all of the respondents would consider themselves Catholic. It was not mentioned as a place of spiritual growth, nor were its leaders considered to be authorities, with the glaring exception of John Paul II, who made nearly everyone's list of authority figures. Church buildings were sometimes mentioned as sources for spiritual power because of the opportunity they provided for a person to concentrate, pray, and notice the beauty of the decor. But church services and church leaders were not considered. The Roman Catholic Church, as an organization, was not described positively, and priests were divided into 2 groups: those who had a real calling and cared about people, and those who didn't. Our faithful Catholic from above said the church has authority in spiritual matters, but then said the church has authority on Sunday only. As an observer, I would say that Poland is in a time of upheaval concerning the influence of the Roman Catholic Church in society. There is a media and popular backlash right now against church personalities and positions. This probably partially explains some of our respondents' negativity. However, some of the issues are deep-seated and enduring. It is likely that the church's position will continue to weaken. We didn't ask any questions that related specifically to ethics, but 2 questions prompted ethics answers. How does a person gain spiritual power? And how would you define spiritual success? Elicited responses that included following rules, especially the golden rule, and an inner peace based on knowing you are doing right. In addition, a question about discerning God's will usually brought a response connected with doing good. Although 3 people equated God's will with fate, 2 people said that we could discover God's will by following the 10 Commandments. 1 person said we could discover God's will by doing what we thought was good, but said that it had nothing to do with what God says. Most people had a relative view of good and evil, right and wrong, based on how they felt. Discerning God's will, through being good, was more something that was felt internally than an external set of rules. We did ask if rules apply equally to all persons, and most respondents said yes, they do. However, most respondents also indicated that in reality, some people got better treatment than others. Different reasons were cited, including friends in high places, possessing more money, or political clout. 1 person said, "Those who make the rules think they are above the rules." Another described the reality as a hierarchy in government and business that allowed for more privileges. The majority of our questions focused on a Polish epistemology. This was the worldview component that I most wanted to study, and the one that seems to be least addressed by other sociological research. I mentioned earlier that the church was not really seen as an authority any longer, but John Paul II still was. Other persons mentioned included Mother Teresa and the Dalai Lama. Most commonly, however, people mentioned a parent, especially their mother. 2 young men mentioned their father as an authority for them, and 2 people said that anyone who cared about people and invested themselves in serving others would be an authority for them. 2 men also mentioned that anyone who had a knowledge and experience in a given area would be considered an authority. We also asked the question, how do you determine whether something is true or not? The most common answer was intuition. According to most respondents, you just know. A few respondents said you feel it or have an inner peace. Most, however, made a connection with knowledge that you already possess. 2 people also said they would ask others, trusting the opinions of their friends to determine what is true. 1 person, the oldest male, said that he would search for proof. Opinions, knowledge, and objective proofs formed his framework, possibly a modern framework, for determining truth. No one indicated any kind of absolute standard for truth and falsehood. Although the 10 Commandments were mentioned as rules for ethical behavior, the Bible was never mentioned as having anything to do with a truth standard. In fact, with perhaps the exception of that oldest man, the idea of a standard absolute truth would probably be unacceptable. Not only was the Bible not mentioned, but the church wasn't either. For nearly every respondent, truth was a personal, subjective issue. Science was trusted in the physical realm, but all but 1 person indicated that science could not answer all of life's questions. And a couple of people were wary of science, pointing out that certain scientific assumptions or discoveries had later proven to be wrong. Hopefully, this brief ethnographic survey of Poles helps to build a picture of a Polish Christian nominalism.